Eli, the fake life coach, does not handle rejection well at all. Not one bit. The fake life coach's approach to handling rejection is reminiscent of a broken child, marked by a distinct inability to process and accept it as a well-adjusted, mature adult. When faced with opposition or exclusion, his reactions often skew towards self-victimization and an urgent need to control the narrative. Instead of reflecting on the reasons behind the rejection or considering constructive feedback, the fake coach tends to externalize blame, creating a reality where he is either the wrong party or the one making the decisive choice. This childlike response to adversity, lacking in introspection and emotional maturity, not only hinders his personal and professional growth, but also perpetuates a cycle of conflict and misunderstanding in his interactions. This pattern, consistently observed in his behavior on his live streams, underscores a deep-seated struggle with accepting the reality of rejection and the responsibilities that come with it. This pattern behavior was starkly illustrated in a series of recent events on a live stream from November 8, 2023, titled, "I'm Leaving the Gig Economy Community, No Joke. What's Next?" And erroneously subtitled "Business and Personal Success Tips," Eli demonstrated his characteristic way of dealing with rejection. This stream was a telling episode where he announced his supposed departure from the gig economy community on YouTube. In the live stream, the fraudulent life coach framed his exit as a decision he made independently, a strategic move to recast the story amid escalating ostracism from the gig community. However, this portrayal was less about a genuine self-initiated choice and more a reflexive response to mounting rejection by participants in the gig community, rather than confronting the reality of the community's increasing disapproval of him. The fake coach opted to present his departure as a deliberate, self-driven decision. This approach is a quintessential Eli tactic designed to sidestep the discomfort of acknowledging that he was, in fact, the one being pushed out, not the one walking away on his own terms. In his live stream, the fake coach remarked, quote, "Some people out here like to say, let's ice them out, right? Let's ice Eli out, right? Well, we're gonna ice you out. How's that?" Unquote. This statement is quite telling. The fake life coach is hopelessly trying to flip the script here. He's acting as if he's not the one being pushed out, but rather he's the one pushing others away. It's a classic Eli move, trying to turn the tables to make it look like he's in control of the situation, even when it's loud and clear that he's been sidelined by the community. The fake coach went on to say, quote, "And it's not even about that. It's about making the right decision to move on to bigger and better things because there's nothing left to do here. There's nothing left to do here," unquote. In this part of his statement, the fake life coach isn't just trying to make it seem like he's the one rejecting others. He's also hoping he can paint a picture where working with the gig community isn't worthwhile anymore. He's framing his departure as a strategic move towards better opportunities, suggesting that the gig community has nothing left to offer him. This approach is a classic example of the fraud's tactic to make himself appear above the situation, as if he's leaving behind something that's beneath him now. He's too good for them anyway. Those people are beneath him now. In that statement, the faker's words convey his resentment toward the community, but also a veiled attempt to undermine its credibility and appeal to others. By suggesting that continued participation is a disservice, he subtly tries to instigate doubt and discontent among the members. His mention of moving on to, quote, "bigger and better things" serves a dual purpose. It's a self-affirmation to mask the bitterness of rejection and a tactic to portray himself as superior or ascending beyond the community's reach. This behavior reflects a mix of resentment and a need to assert his own value, especially in the face of perceived exclusion. The fake coach's strategy is not just to leave quietly, but to attempt to diminish the community's allure and significance in the eyes of its members, perhaps as a form of retribution for his own alienation. Essentially, the faker's supposed departure is laced with the hope that in his absence, the community he leaves behind will falter and fail. He wants to burn the house down, but lacks any real stature or influence to make it happen. Instead, it remains nothing more than an implied desire. This weird defensive announcement that he's supposedly shifting his focus away from the gig community is a clear exemplification of the faker's poor capacity to handle rejection. The way he navigated this situation mirrors a child's refusal to accept a reality that doesn't align with their desires. By failing to engage with the genuine reasons for his exclusion and instead creating an alternate story where he is in control, the phony coach shows a profound lack of the emotional resilience typically seen in mature adult interactions. It's a defensive strategy that might momentarily shield his fragile ego, but ultimately reveals his vulnerability in the face of rejection. For a bite-sized illustration of the fake coach's inability to maturely handle rejection, let's detour for a moment and look at a telling situation from a live stream on November 11, 2023. This particular instance serves as a revealing microcosm of his broader pattern of behavior. A chat participant who goes by the name Kling is King openly expresses their disdain for the fake coach's tactless discussion of someone's recently deceased daughter, a move widely recognized as a tasteless exploitation of emotional vulnerability. Eli reads his comment by Kling is King in the chat.
Kling is King, I don't agree. Either speculating on someone's recently deceased daughter is below the belt. Unsubscribe.
This participant in the chat highlights a moral line crossed by the fake life coach, prompting their decision to disengage from his channel. It was the participant's straightforward intention to unsubscribe from the channel that deeply irritated the fake coach. The fake coach's response to this is not one of introspection or consideration, but of immediate and impulsive retaliation.
Kling is King, I don't agree. Either speculating on someone's recently deceased daughter is below the belt. Unsubscribe. Well, I'll just ban you. You can go, Kling is King. Have a nice day.
His reaction reveals this critical deficiency of the fake life coach's personality, his inability to gracefully accept criticism or loss of support, instead of acknowledging the participant's departure or reflecting on the cause of their dissatisfaction. The fake coach opts for an aggressive and childish stance, banning someone from his channel who had already left and was conveying a reasonable perspective. This approach is indicative of a fragile ego that cannot tolerate dissent or disapproval, driving him to attempt to create the impression of assertive control by removing the dissenting voice from his platform. The faker then says,
"You guys are not mature and emotionally stable enough to handle an honest and genuine conversation, so good riddance."
You guys are not mature and emotionally stable enough to handle an honest and genuine conversation. So good riddance, unquote, further cementing his defensive and childish posture. This statement, devoid of self-awareness, ironically projects his own emotional immaturity onto the participant. It's a classic case of deflection, where the fraud attempts to invert the situation to portray himself as the rational party, unfairly criticized by those he deems emotionally unstable. This narrative twist, however, falls flat as it comes off as a desperate attempt to maintain a semblance of control and superiority in a situation where he clearly feels rejected and undermined. In essence, this brief moment encapsulates the fake coach's approach to handling rejection, a quick pivot to offense, an impulsive dismissal of dissenting voices, and a projection of his insecurities on others. It's yet another reactionary pattern that speaks volumes about his emotional maturity and his capacity to engage in constructive dialogue, especially in the face of criticism or loss of support. In other words, you're not unsubscribing from my channel. I'm the one who's kicking you out. Or you're not rejecting me. I'm rejecting you. What we are observing here is someone who never achieved any emotional maturity beyond a very young age in early childhood. Shifting our focus back to the faker's ostracism from the gig community and how he's been poorly handling this rejection, it's worth understanding his tactical approach for entering new communities on YouTube. The fake coach's method reveals a pattern of manipulative behavior systematically employed in an attempt to gain attention and establish a presence within these groups. First, the fake life coach starts by pinpointing the most influential members of the community. These are typically individuals with the largest subscriber counts and the highest levels of engagement on their channels. His target selection is strategic, focusing on those who hold the most sway and visibility. Second, with his targets identified, the fake coach launches into a campaign of toxic attacks. He fabricates stories, personalizes his attacks, and zeroes in on what he perceives as vulnerable points for his targets. This toxic approach is designed to provoke a reaction. The fraud openly subscribes to the notion that, in his own words, quote, "Any publicity is good publicity, whether it's positive or negative." His actions are a calculated attempt to exploit vulnerabilities for the sake of drawing attention to himself. Third, when the fake life coach eventually garners a response and faces backlash for his lies and underhanded tactics, he quickly shifts gears to play the victim. He tries to frame the saga as a misunderstanding and pretends to seek reconciliation. This is a calculated move on the faker's part, believing he has now sufficiently engaged his target to start positioning himself as a credible figure within the new community. The fake life coach's method is essentially an attempt to catapult himself to prominence within a community by antagonistically leveraging its most notable members for their attention. If successful, these slimy tactics by the fake coach would bypass the genuine effort and integrity required to naturally rise to a respected position. However, time and time again, this strategy invariably leads to failure for the fake coach every single time. His toxic behavior is eventually, if not quickly, recognized, leading to his inevitable exclusion from the communities he tries to infiltrate with these deceitful tactics. This recurring pattern not only highlights the faker's inability to form genuine relationships within these communities, but also underscores his continual struggle with handling rejection and criticism in a mature and constructive manner. In his attempt to gain attention in the gig community, the fake coach fixated on Pedro Santiago, a prominent figure within the group. The fake life coach viewed Pedro as the key to gaining leverage through his cheap, underhanded, sleazy tactics, prioritizing prominence over integrity. Instead of trying to engage with Pedro honestly and focusing on pertinent gig economy topics, the fake coach resorted to personal attacks. He fabricated stories about Pedro's personal life, veering far from professional or relevant discussions. This approach was not at all about contributing to the community and entirely about trying to undermine Pedro to provoke a response and draw attention to himself. Such tactics backfired in a big way, however, ultimately leading to the fake life coach's isolation, creating a toxic reputation for himself within the community, exemplifying his inability to foster genuine connections or growth. In the wake of his moment of frustration with his announcement that he was supposedly going to no longer focus on content creators in the gig community, in a predictable twist, given that the fake coach doesn't have any real audience, the fake coach backpedals during 2 follow-up live streams. These episodes showcase a remarkable flip-flop in his stance, underlining his struggle with rejection. His streams, amusingly titled, "Pedro and Hannibal, you're about to be canceled in less," and "Ignoring me makes you irrelevant," reveal his desperate grasp for attention. The phony life coach's assertion that Pedro's lack of attention toward him would somehow diminish Pedro's significance is not just ironic, but also contradicts his earlier declaration where he had claimed that any engagement within the gig community would be a disservice for anyone who chooses to participate. Yet in these follow-up streams, he fervently seeks Pedro's attention. This contradictory behavior is a stark display of the faker's emotional instability and a desperate cry for recognition. The irony in the fake coach's claim that he could render Pedro, quote, irrelevant or, quote, canceled is glaringly apparent. The fake life coach, with almost 0 genuine followers and widespread disdain on YouTube, ludicrously and hopelessly tries to position himself as a pivotal figure in Pedro's success. This deluded assertion exposes just how disconnected the fake life coach is from reality. The fake life coach's insistence on acknowledgement from Pedro and his framing of Pedro's indifference as a sign of irrelevance points to a deep-rooted need for affirmation. When ignored, the fake coach resorts to irrational and inconsistent justifications, clearly seen in his shifting opinions about collaborating within the gig community. These actions and statements echo the traits of malignant narcissistic personality disorder. The fake coach's relentless pursuit of attention and validation, coupled with his inability to gracefully handle rejection, propels his erratic behavior. It's evident that he struggles with maintaining a sense of self-importance in an environment where he is increasingly marginalized. His approach not only lacks maturity, but also highlights a pattern of seeking self-worth and external validation, particularly from those he perceives as threats or rivals. This exploration into the fake coach's handling of rejection paints a vivid picture of a personality deeply entrenched in denial, manipulation, and a desperate need for validation. His actions and reactions within the YouTube community, as well as within the gig economy sector, reveal a pattern of behavior that is not only counterproductive, but also psychologically revealing. This journey through his various live streams and interactions exposes the underlying issues driving his conduct, from a fragile ego to a distorted perception of his own importance and influence. As we continue to unravel the layers of the faker's true persona, it becomes increasingly clear that his behavior is not an anomaly, but a consistent trait defining his interactions on the platform. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for future episodes where we further discuss the fake life coach's ongoing antics that we reliably see from him on YouTube.